Well, good morning, and you're listening to the Wave Southend, which is your new go-to local mental health and wellbeing podcast. My name's Stuart Wesselby, and I'll be your host for today's episode of The Wave. Just a bit about myself. I'm the Head of Adult Skills and Employability at Southend Adult Community College. I've been in the education field for the last 15 years or so in many roles across the UK. So without further ado, I'm going to move on to introduce my guest for this morning. And today we're joined by Krishna Ramkhelawon. I'm not sure I've said that perfectly. So welcome, Krishna. And if you could just give us a brief introduction about yourself and your job role, etc.
Thank you. Good morning, Stuart. And thank you for having me on the podcast today. So I'm the Director of Public Health at Southend City Council. And my responsibility is to support and advise the council on all issues to do with improving health and well-being, looking at the challenges around issues like health protection and COVID, and making sure that we are able to address how we tackle inequalities in our communities.
Okay, that's great. So in today's podcast, we'd like to have a chat really about local mental health and wellbeing. Over the series of the podcast, we hope to look at the whole sort of gambit of mental health across the city of Southend, etc. So, Krishna, do you want to have a chat with us about how this podcast actually came about? Why we're sitting here today in sunny Southend?
Indeed. Well, it's really pleasing that it is sunny today after a very wet week last week. But, we should not forget that actually on a sunny day, it does help people's emotional well-being. So sometimes it's easy for us to forget how important mental health and emotional well-being is to each of us.
Yeah.
And certainly over 2 years ago when we started to talk about the potential of this podcast, it was really towards the first half, we call it, of the pandemic, which, in effect has been over 2.5 years. We felt the challenges being exacerbated by the way people had to live under restrictions, young people not being able to see each other as much, interaction between humans, which is a very important part of our mental and emotional well-being, was severely disrupted. So we've always had a challenge. We know from the work we do locally that mental health well-being is an important component of our daily living. And we felt we should be trying to think about other ways to capitalize on how we can reach out to the community and better support them and make sure that support is there in different ways. And the podcast was one of those that was discussed, and I was very, very happy actually to say, let's find a way to embrace and support this development.
Yeah.
And most importantly for us in public health is the topic area we refer to as being living safe and well. So within those, and as part of the wider development of work, we were looking at how we can better provide information, advice and guidance, and the creation of Live Well Southend as a portal, web portal, sort of emerged out of that, very just at the cusp, at the start of the pandemic. And we continue to work on developing the website. We are about to reprocure the website because we've had a lot of feedback about how we can improve that. But on the back of that, what I think is also important is the work that we do normally as bread and butter in public health is we undertake community needs assessment to understand what are the needs in the community and how we should be thinking about addressing those. Alongside the work we do, we've also been engaging with the Youth Council. And a few years ago, they did a survey among young people, and they've created a charter referred to as the 1757 Voices Charter, which actually is the number of people who responded to the survey. And that is very much focused on mental health and well-being. And again, it's added a different dimension to us looking at how we improve our strategy.
Okay. Okay, so tell me a bit. I'm quite interested in the community needs assessment then. So is that, so say in all the wards across Southend, is it done by wards or is it done by areas like South Church, etc.? How is that? How is that put?
So we've got a number of different needs assessments. So we've got a wider Essex-wide needs assessment, which includes Southend, Thurrock and Essex. And where the data is available to us at a ward level, we will disaggregate it to the ward level. Sometimes we get a bit lower than that. We can do it and look at data that we have around, for example, GPs level, so we can better target the interventions we have in those areas. I think there is a lot more we are working on with the Office of National Statistics to try and get further disaggregated data, so that's much, much lower level. So it actually makes sense to then be more targeted, in those areas. We also look at data we collect using the what we call the Southend profile, which can also target information that we collect and have around school settings, because we see school settings as an important community setting. So these are the things that then feed back into what we are doing. Sometimes we also look at what we do with workplaces, understanding the challenges in those areas as well. So gradually we continuously improve what we call the joint strategic needs assessment, which are the detailed work that we do in the community.
Okay. So how do I find out about, in my local area, say, I'll use South Church as the example. How do I find out about what the local council is doing for the mental health needs of, say, my area, and what agencies there are out there?
Yeah. So in terms of understanding what we're doing around the needs and identifying the needs, we've got a portal called Smart Southend. So you can look on there and get the information you want for your area. What we've been doing with trying to scope out the kind of support that we have in the community, that's what the emergence of the Live Well Southend came about, is about the ability for local groups and anyone who is creating an opportunity to engage are able to join Live Well Southend and put that information in there. And then gradually you can do searches. But what we've identified is it doesn't always give you the precision you need. And that's why we're re-procuring the website, and we're hoping to have a new website, fingers crossed, really by the end of the summer this year, which will enable those search facilities to improve. We're trying to also do further mapping of community assets. By that I mean, groups and others who are running support groups in the community to improve access on Live Well Southend. But it's, we should not see that as the only way to access information, and this is why we feel by accessing more digitalization, using social media, this podcast, for example, we are able to reach out to people more. Yeah.
Okay. So how would you assess the mental health and well-being of Southend City? How does that compare with any other cities of a similar size across the UK?
So we do a lot of benchmarking. So there's national data, again, it's through the Office of National Statistics. We've also got the national NHS and public health databases that we can access through those. And when you look at the JSNA, you will see that the needs assessment that we have on Smart Southend, you will see that we compare. We do those comparisons to give you a sense where we are. And we know before the pandemic, we were already an area where we had quite a lot of mental health and well-being issues. In across Southend as a city, and we believe with the new data that are going to be released more this year, post the pandemic, pandemic isn't over, but it's still that phase of recovery. We get to see even more challenges in the community, and I think for us it will be about identifying exactly where we would want to target some of the interventions that we would want to put in place over the next year or two.
Okay. And one of the areas that's quite close to my heart is obviously the mental health of young people. Obviously, we have a college here, and we are seeing increasingly, probably in the last 10 years or so, the incidence of mental health impacting on young people. And I think with the pandemic, that's probably going to be even more so. So, what is being done to help the young people of Southend to cope with those challenges?
Yeah, I think there are two things we are refocusing on. I think as part of the recovery, we felt we needed to spend more earlier intervention in the schools. So last year, what we did, for example, is actually the year before that, we worked with the School Sports Partnership to set up a number of schemes that were looking at both physical and mental health at the same time. So we jointly funded a number of schemes through the schools. And we've been using what we call the Healthy Schools program that actually public health runs through the school nurses with the schools to try and look at enhancing what we are offering within those, alongside some of the services colleagues in the NHS, for example, are trying to put in place as well. But last year, what we did is, as part of a conversation we had through the Healthy Schools program with young people, we've created, we introduced, I should say, a national program referred to as the Youth Health Champions program. So we've had 8 other institutions taken part last year as part of this program of work. Basically, what we do is we've been training young people in years 9 and 10 to become peer supporters within the schools. As part of these training programs, we've also had those who are, so the second cohort who joined last year included those from some of the specialist schools, as well as those who are educated or elected to be educated at home as well, which was really pleasing to have them on board. Yeah. So they get, the young people get to spend an hour with me, basically quizzing me about a number of things. And interestingly, 2 of the main topics that were top of the agenda was emotional health and well-being, and the other one was actually around vaping. Oh, right. Being a concern for them, which again we've taken action through our trading standards to minimise the access for young people. But in terms of mental health well-being, certainly for me, there is a strong feel around what the Youth Council have done around their voice charter, and I think it's about how we build further on enabling that part. And certainly the noise around, we've got to use social media more. We need to think about how we improve Live Well Southend to make it more accessible to young people as well. So there's, this an area we've still got a lot of work to do. We've got to carry on working with young people to get to that space. Yeah.
Okay, so probably final question from me then is, what advice would you give a young person of 16, 17, 18 years old? How could they help their mental health and well-being? What sort of things can they do to help themselves?
Yeah, I think, it's young people these days, they do spend a lot of time on the screen. And I'm not talking about a computer screen here, but I think it's the phone. Yeah. It's become their go-to. And we can't just depart from it, because that's the way of the future, and we just need to think about how we work around it. And I know some of the lessons we've had from other sites where we know young people get their information, and certainly at Public Health, this is something that was a real challenge for me during the pandemic, where we were trying to improve vaccination, and social media was being used wrongly to try and discredit the work we were doing. So it's about making sure we are able to balance that information that young people are getting with the right information. So doing things locally and using social media in a positive way, potentially looking at those who are more recognized as if you want, the gurus on social media by local people, is how we engage with them to support us in that space is important. I would also say to young people, you've got to try and find and take time out. It's very important, to take time out. Even doing some physical activity, going for a walk, going out with your friends, kicking a ball about, whatever you want to do, is important, and we should not forget that physical well-being is important for also the mental health well-being.
Definitely.
And that is why we worked with the School Sports Partnership in trying to effectively get that in a space where we felt confident that we can get bite-sized information and support into young people's lives, but it is talking is important. That's what we are doing with the Youth Health Champions, is creating people who others feel I can go and talk to them about that. And if you don't talk, whether it's your friend, your parents, or whoever you may want to talk to, then you're going to miss an opportunity to explore where you are and how you can better manage it. So we do it every day. We all do it. I do it myself. And it's important that we get in a space where young people feel confident they've got that kind of support.
Okay, Krishna, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Just to reiterate that this is the first episode of a 3-episode launch. In our next episode, we'll be giving you a brief introduction into wellbeing. And in the last launch episode, we'll be joined by a lady called Barbara Corty and some of the wonderful tutors here at Southend, who will give us an overview of the Ways to Wellbeing courses that we can access here at the college. So thank you, Krishna. It's been really interesting talking to you this morning, And that's all from us today. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube at The Wave Southend. Please feel free to leave us a message and let us know what you think. And don't forget to give the other 2 episodes released today a listen. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.